Your daily fix of women's mixed martial arts from the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and one championship. Be in the loop, cause Golden State Media Concepts got you covered. Get your fix on women's MMA. We've got you covered on Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Women's MMA Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Arnel De Leon, and hopefully you are doing well for yourself, whether you live in States or internationally. I wish you, your friends, your family, you're all healthy, you're all safe, especially because currently in the States, things are getting incredibly complicated, things are getting very controversial, unstable, unsettling. So I really do hope that all my viewers are honestly doing well for themselves during this major time of uncertainty. But one thing that is certain is the fact that we're getting sports coming back to America to an extent. So currently right now in Orlando, Florida, we're going to have basketball happening in Disney World. The NBA season is going to be returning back. They're going to go straight to the playoffs. They're having their basketball events happening in the Orlando, Florida area. And Las Vegas, it is reported that the Nevada State Athletic Commission is going to go allow combat sports to be legal and be considered an essential business to happen in the Las Vegas area, which means boxing is making a comeback, mixed martial arts is back. So recently, the last major UFC event was UFC Fight Night, Gilbert Burns vs. Tyron Woodley, and in that card, we had an opening main card bout here between Hannah Cifers versus Mackenzie Dern. This women's strawweight bout was special because Mackenzie Dern became the first ever and only woman in women's UFC history to win their fight via single leg key lock. So, congratulations, Mackenzie Dern was able to successfully tap out Hannah Cifers with a single leg key lock in the first round, 2 minutes and 24 seconds in, and it was a very close bout. Mackenzie Dern was the only woman among all the main contenders here, among all the favorites in this card. We had Augusto Sakai, we got Billy Quarantillo, Roosevelt Roberts, Augusto Sakai, and Mackenzie Dern. They were the four fighters who were the favorites coming into their fights. The only underdog in the entire card to go in was Gilbert Burns. But among all the favorites who won, they won pretty decisively. They really did. Augusto Sakai came into the fight as a favorite. He obviously defeated Ivanov. Billy Quarantillo, although that was the fight of the night, in my personal opinion, between Spark Carlisle versus Billy Quarantillo, that fight was obviously in favor for Quarantillo, especially when you get to the second round. Roosevelt Roberts pretty much squashed Brock Weaver, and so Mackenzie Dern versus Hannah Cifers, this fight really could have got out of the way. It really could have, because although this fight ended 2 minutes and 24 seconds into the fights, for about over half the fight, for about 2 minutes, Hannah Cifers was winning this fight. It's weird knowing that in just 2.5 minutes is a 2.5 minute fight. Of the 2.5 minutes, 2 minutes involve Hannah Cifers pretty much beating the heck out of Mackenzie Dern in this fight, because the bell rings. Hannah Cifers lunges in at Mackenzie Dern, no fear, goes in, starts grappling with her, gets her with a clinch, and is like just unloading hooks. Well, unloading a bunch of hooks and dirty boxing and uppercuts right from the clinch position. Most of this fight really was based around Hannah Cifers trying to clinch or clinching with Mackenzie Dern, and Hannah Cifers pretty much beating down Mackenzie Dern with her striking. And even when the fighters were broken up from the clinch, when it came to the boxing, Hannah Cifers lunged in, put her left arm out, and started clinching with Mackenzie Dern. So, when I look at this fight, yes, Hannah Cifers came into the fight with the right strategy, I think. I believe Mackenzie Dern didn't see it coming, and she was overwhelmed in about the first minute and a half of the fight. But here's the problem with Hannah Cifers as it pertains to this fight. I really thought Hannah Cifers had this fight in the bag, that she really should have and could have won this fight. The only issue here was the fact that Daniel Cormier and Michael Bisping talked about this as it pertains to other fights also. It kind of goes along with this one, and that fighters who are willing to go take risks and are able to accumulate certain hits or punches to the face, they'll learn what is safe and what isn't safe. And when they understand what is safe and what isn't safe, they'll be able to go take more risks. And upon taking more risks, they can go and open themselves up for a position to go win. And Hannah Cifers, she took the risk. And Mackenzie Dern, she bit it. She bit the risk. she got unloaded several punches to the face, but Daniel Cormier talked about this, that you really don't know how safe you are in terms of the distance between you and the other fighter until you get punched in the face a lot and hard. It's the same reason why Gilbert Burns, when he fought against Tyron Woodley, or when Weili Zhang was fighting against Ioana Jędrzejczyk, they were always pressing the action in the fights. They got hit in the face accumulatively more, but they pressed the fight because they knew that they could handle whatever strikes were being given onto them. Gilbert Burns went towards Tyron Woodley with the risk, with the knowledge that Tyron Woodley has knockout power, and he has to endure that knockout power, and he has to find a way to persevere through his punching power in some way so he can open himself up for a good counterpunch. And the same thing applies towards Weili Zhang. Like, Ioana Jędrzejczyk, although her face looked a lot worse than Weili Zhang, she was always forward, she was always aggressive, and she was putting herself in a bad predicament. In theory, she was putting herself in a bad predicament in order to get herself a good opportunity to find her opening and take advantage of the fight. In this scenario, Hannah Cybers kept clinching with Mackenzie Dern. And Mackenzie Dern, she took all the uppercuts, she took the clinching, she took the hooks in, she took all the dirty boxing. She was losing out in the stand-up for the most part. But Mackenzie Dern, she recognized, like, okay, I was given the very worst Hannah Cybers can give me in terms of punching power, in terms of killing strikes. I know what I can take. And so then she moved forward. If Hannah Cybers' punches were really that staggering, or really that painful, or really that bothersome towards Mackenzie Dern would have been fighting for the most part as a counterfighter. But she didn't do that. Hannah Cybers became aggressive towards Mackenzie Dern. Mackenzie Dern retaliated by being like, okay, you know what? I can handle the punches. Let me press forward because I know I can take the punches now. And Hannah Cybers kept clinching Mackenzie. And to be honest with you, I don't like the clinching Hannah Cybers was doing because it was kind of lazily done in the sense that when this clinching happening, it usually involves both arms bringing over you're underhooking your opponent, or you're bringing your arms over to the back of the neck of your opponent, and you're bringing him close to your chest, and that's where you can go lay the most damage with your uppercuts and hooks. Instead, Hannah Cybers, she's doing clinching with only one arm, and then she's kind of lazily with her right arms like just waving it around. And then she's punching Mackenzie Dern. I felt like she could have had more control of Mackenzie Dern if she were to control her in the clinch with both arms instead of one. I understand why she was clinching with one arm, because she needed the second arm to go and pull out a lot of strikes. But these strikes just didn't have that much stopping power for Mackenzie Dern to respect her power and her range and her clinching. This led towards Mackenzie Dern being like, okay, I can take your punches. I'm fine clinching with her because her clinches... Her clinch striking isn't doing that much damage to me, and I can take it. And guess what? Hannah Cybers clinched with Mackenzie Dern, and because she's only clinching with one arm out, Mackenzie Dern was able to go hook herself under her left arm, grab onto a headlock, and then float her over for a slam. She floated her over for a slam, worked her way down for a single leg key lock, and tapped her out. For the most part, Hannah Cybers was winning this fight. But she came in, she came in with the right strategy. It just, she really didn't fulfill that strategy. I felt like she was a wee bit sloppy in her clinching. She should have fought a little bit more smarter. I think she pretty much, she threw out all her cards up in front. She wanted that early knockout as quick as possible within the first 2 minutes. And yeah, it was a huge risk, and it could have went well for her. It really could have. But because she went very aggressive, she threw everything out onto Mackenzie Dern. Mackenzie Dern was able to recognize the openings, and from those openings, she was able to go with the slam and the submission victory. So I'm happy for Mackenzie Dern for getting the victory there against Hannah Cybers. Hannah Cybers was really tough. Hannah Cybers, this wasn't an easy victory. Mackenzie Dern, out of any fighter in this main card here, had the biggest struggle and biggest annoyances with her opponents. Because Billy Quarantillo, yes, Spike Carla took advantage of him in the first round. But second and third was obviously Billy Quarantillo. Roosevelt Roberts, he took advantage of Brock Weaver. Sakai, obviously, he was winning from the start, from round one. Mackenzie Dern, she sees Hannah Cybers, this warrior, come right at her, trying to knock her out as fast as her can. You can tell by her face that she was easily overwhelmed, and for a brief couple seconds there, it really looked like that she could have been knocked out by Hannah Cybers. But you know what? Mackenzie Dern was able to bounce back. She got the victory on Cybers. I congratulate both women because apparently there are medical suspensions that were given out to all the fighters, but out of every fighter in the main card, Mackenzie Dern and Hannah Cyphers were the only two fighters in the main card to walk away with no medical suspensions. So they are not suspended, they can fight early on if they want and make some money. So congratulations. You're listening to the GSMC Women's MMA Podcast, coming back after the short break here.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And we are back. And so let's talk about the women's strawweight division, considering the fact that it is the most deepest division in all of women's mixed martial arts right now. And we just talked about Mackenzie Dern versus Hannah Cyphers. What's next for Mackenzie Dern? So I'm looking at Mackenzie Dern right now then, and when I look up on the division, the rankings here, in my personal opinion, I think it would be a great matchup for her to face somebody in the realm of Amanda Ribas or Randa Marcos or... Yeah, so the four possible matchups for Mackenzie Dern that I would make if I was a match booker here would be Randa Marcos, Amanda Ribas. Amanda Ribas has defeated Mackenzie Dern. Mackenzie Dern looked really good in her performance against Hannah Cyphers, so we could see a rematch happening there. We got Caroline Kowalkiewicz, who's going off a 3-fight losing streak right now, and we have Tecia Torres. Amanda Ribas is set to face against Paige Van Zant. If Amanda Ribas were to defeat Paige Van Zant, then Ribas will go up ahead in the rankings, so I don't expect Ribas to go face up against Mackenzie Dern if she were to defeat Paige Van Zant, and Ribas is the favorite in that matchup. Carolina has no matchup coming in right now. Tecia Torres, she's matched up against Brianna Van Buren, which is coming up in 2 weeks of this month, in June 20th. Tecia Torres, she has a 3-fight losing streak. If she were to go defeat against Brianna, I think win or lose, Tecia Torres would be a good matchup for Mackenzie Dern, and also Carolina Kowalkiewicz. Amanda Ribas and Randa Marcos, those are the four people I think Mackenzie Dern should face, continuing her way into making her way up the women's strawweight divisions. The other women's fight of the night was Antonia Shevchenko versus Keegan Keegan, and this fight was a really fun one for me personally, just because we really saw the complete game of Keegan. We saw Keegan for the most part grapple against Antonina, which was the right choice. She fought very smart, she fought safe, and she fought the right way when matched up against a striker like Antonia Shevchenko. I never really understood why Antonina was matched up against Keegan Keegan. I really didn't, considering the fact that Antonina is outside of the top 10 rankings right now in the women's flyweight division. The women's flyweight division is very weird right now because Valentina Shevchenko, since she's cleared out for the most part the entire division, Valentina defeated Keegan Keegan, and then Keegan Keegan is now matched up with her sister, who's outside the top 10. And then the number 2 ranked fighter, Jessica Ai, who also lost to Valentina Shevchenko, is now fighting against Cynthia Calvillo, who is outside the top 10 in the women's strawweight division. So I'm really unsure what's happening right now. I personally believe that the UFC are trying to find their next big star to go challenge against Valentina Shevchenko, and that could be potentially somebody from either the women's bantamweight division or the women's strawweight division. That's how I'm seeing things on right now. Because Jessica Ai, she's against Cynthia Calvillo, outside the top 10 of women's rankings. Keegan Keegan, also outside the top 10. The number 2 and number 3 ranked fighters are fighting fighters outside the rankings. And the only reason why they're being fed them is because if Antonina were to win, or Cynthia Calvillo were to win their fights, then they get to slide their way into the top 5 of the fight division. Because as of right now, the women's flyweight division and the women's featherweight divisions are not really... It's not really clear on what's going on with either of those divisions, as fighters are moving up and down in the weight classes. We have Jennifer Maia versus Vivian Araujo, who is outside the top 10. Roxanne Modafferi, who got herself into the top 5 rankings, which I am really happy about. That fight right now is the only one that makes sense, and that is Roxanne Modafferi versus Lauren Murphy. We get the number 5 and number 7 ranked fighter being matched up with each other. So I'm right now just unsure of what's up with the rankings here. Why is there really such a mixed match of what is going on here with these fighters and matchups here. But if I look at the rankings here, Antonia Shevchenko, she's nowhere near the top 10. She's ranked number 17. She's the number 17th ranked fighter in the women's fight divisions, and I understand why there's a lot of hype behind Antonia when she first came to the UFC. A whole lot of hype. The prediction was Antonia Shevchenko, the older sister of Valentina Shevchenko, the current women's fight champion, was going to go steam her way through all the matchups. She came into all of her fights as the favorite. She came in against Roxanne Medefri as a favorite. She came against Lucy Podolova as a favorite. Even though she came in as the underdog against Keegan, there were a lot of expectations over Antonia Shevchenko versus Keegan. It was a complete one-sided fight. But if you're to look at the betting odds for Keegan and Antonia Shevchenko were really close to each other for some strange weird reason. Because when I look at the matchup, I was like, okay, Keegan as an all-around mixed martial artist is superior than Antonia Shevchenko, and I think she is smart enough as a fighter and good enough as a grappler to go take down someone like Antonia, whose ground game is nearly non-existent. Now, I wouldn't say nearly non-existent, it's there, it's just she hasn't fought anybody within the UFC whose level of grappling is as high as Keegan, and so I knew that Keegan were to take her down, take away the best aspect of Antonia's game, which is the striking, the boxing, the kickboxing, then Keegan was obviously going to win the fights. But coming into the fight, a lot of like odds makers were like, okay, Antonia Shevchenko, Keegan, this could be a close fight. I think it was like negative 120 and like plus 160. I think those are the betting odds that were going on, but it was fairly really close here. And so right now, Valentina Shevchenko, we don't know what's going on with her next. She just got off an injury and she's making a film right now with Halle Berry. It was rumored it was going to be Valentina Shevchenko versus Joanne Calderwood. Things broke off from that fight. And with an interview with Brett Okamoto with Dana White said that he is still pushing forward a fight with Valentina Shevchenko versus Joanne Calderwood. And if that doesn't happen, we could potentially see Valentina Shevchenko fighting against another champion in another division. If you guys don't know, on ESPN, on their YouTube channel, they're posting up interviews and highlight packages for the upcoming UFC event happening this Saturday. And there's an interview between Ariel Helwani and Felicia Spencer. And in the interview, everyone in the comment section, the YouTube comments, are just constantly bringing up Valentina Shevchenko. There are more people talking about Valentina Shevchenko and Amanda Nunes destroying Felicia Spencer than providing any positive input about Felicia Spencer. Really, because the actual interview that Felicia Spencer had with Ariel Helwani was mostly positive. It was Ariel Helwani talking to Felicia Spencer, giving her praise that for her being a math teacher, a virtual math teacher. It's sad right now knowing that Felicia Spencer, she quit her job as a virtual math teacher, which is so ironic considering the fact that currently, as of right now, all schools are implementing virtual teaching right now. I myself took virtual teaching classes because for those who don't know, like I have a side gig as working as an English teacher. And so I respect Felicia Spencer for having this alternate job. I've talked extensively about how their fighters should be pushing towards alternate ways into making money. Since if you're not the top person in the UFC and you're not participating in 2 fights a year, the money you're making as a mixed martial arts fighter really isn't there. But according to Felicia Spencer, she said that she left her job as a virtual math teacher in order to pursue bigger goals as a fighter. And since there's a lot of momentum right now going towards Felicia Spencer, her amazing performance against Chris Cyborg, and her going into the biggest fight of her entire career against the all-time great Amanda Nunes, Felicia Spencer, she's going all in for this fight. Now, if you guys haven't seen the UFC Countdown Show, the UFC countdowns are sometimes good and bad. They sometimes present one fighter as like a villain and another fighter as the obvious babyface good guy. And in this scenario, it was I think it was like 30 to 40 minutes UFC countdown doc where it was highlighting both Amanda Nunes and Felicia Spencer. The majority of this was focused around Felicia Spencer, and the reason why is because Amanda Nunes, she's had UFC countdowns many times, and they never really presented Amanda Nunes in the positive light in terms of likability. She's being presented like Ronda Rousey. That's the strange part about it. She's being presented as the Ronda Rousey, as the greatest of all time. She's always in the gym. She's wrecking everybody. She's hitting the bags hard. She's not doing anything else in life except living in the gym. And then we cut to Felicia Spencer. And other than the fact that she's working out in the gym, it goes into her life as a teacher. It goes into her going to Florida. She went to a zoo, and she had to deal with, like, alligators, or this, like, boa constrictor going around her this one time, or, like, holding spiders and tarantulas. It was very weird. They presented Amanda Nunes as this, like, cold-blooded killer, and Felicia Spencer as this ordinary, normal girl, like spending time with her family, with her husband, with her coaching staff, going to the zoo, interacting with, like, alligators, spiders, giant snakes. She's talking about, you know, like, her day in the grocery store. Like, it's so mind-boggling how they present the narrative here, because right now, the majority of people are predicting Amanda Nunes knocking out Felicia Spencer in the first round. And according to Felicia Spencer, she expects a grind-out fight, and she'll try to adjust and defeat Amanda Nunes in a per-round basis. So even Felicia Spencer herself, she doesn't predict herself knocking out Amanda Nunes. I don't predict herself knocking out Amanda Nunes. Felicia Spencer's strategy into fighting Amanda Nunes is to grind her out through 5 rounds, because we've never really seen Amanda Nunes go out there for 5 rounds in multiple fights. So it'll be very interesting what Felicia Spencer brings to the fights. It really is. You're listening to the GSMC Women's MMA Podcast, coming back after this short break here.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back. So I'm discussing Amanda Nunes versus Felicia Spencer for the women's featherweight title coming up this Saturday, June 6th at the UFC Apex Facility Building in Las Vegas. So, this matchup here, a lot of people are betting on Amanda Nunes just destroying Felicia Spencer. If you look at the comment section for every single video as it pertains to Felicia Spencer, the majority of people are saying Amanda Nunes gonna knock her out first round without a doubt, guarantee. Can we just have Valentina Shevchenko versus Amanda Nunes? There are more names being thrown out there than Felicia Spencer herself, or any positive input about Felicia Spencer. And so, WMMA rankings are hyping up the fight between Spencer versus Amanda Nunes. I'm going to be cheering for Felicia Spencer because my tuition is saying this might be a close fight here. This might be a close shocker fight to which Felicia Spencer just slowly grinds out Amanda Nunes. Like, Nunes is not going to take Spencer all that seriously. And considering the fact that we've seen some cracks in Nunes' game in her fight against Germaine de Randamie, Felicia Spencer just becomes a better fighter in a per-fight basis. For her past 3 fights, she's improved significantly in a lot of aspects. She was seen initially as just primarily a grappler. Then she was seen mostly as a grappler. And then when she fought against Chris Cyborg, it was going to be a grappler versus striker fight. It became a striker versus striker bout. And it was Chris Cyborg who had to utilize her grappling ability to stop against Felicia Spencer. And then afterwards, she then TKO'd her following opponent. So Felicia Spencer does have a strong all-around game. It is whether or not she can pull up that grind-out factor that I really believe is the only way she can do to defeat Amanda Nunes. Felicia Spencer herself says that she expects to defeat Amanda Nunes through a grind-out championship 5-round fight. I don't see her submitting or beating her in the first or third round. But you know what? I can expect this being a very close bout. I can expect this to be a complete war through all 5 rounds. And so WMMA rankings here are hyping up the fight here, with the title being Felicia Spencer gears up the women's UFC featherweight title in times of quarantine. The Jungle closed their public classes, but the featherweight contender Felicia Phenom Spencer prepared for a title shot behind closed doors as she takes on Amanda Nunes at UFC 250. I have 2 training partners that I picked in the beginning of all this. We are able to go in privately to the gym, Spencer said. The owner, luckily, has been very supportive of the camp, letting us being able to train there. The Orlando-based gym didn't have more than 6 people during Spencer's time in her training sessions. She and her husband, Todd Coppinger, practiced social distancing while hitting mitts and taking walks at the park. I was uncertain the first couple of weeks when things started to change. As far as quarantine and shutdowns, I didn't know what I was going to do. But we figured out day by day, Spencer said. It became the new normal, and it's worked, and it's kind of nice to have a little bit of flexibility, spending a lot of time in recovery, and also some extra downtime. Coppinger has the company of his daughter, Addie, from Illinois. Addie's mother wanted her to stay with her father since she works at a prison and feared that their daughter might get sick. She does her homework at the gym, and I get my morning lift in, and when we're done, we all head home and have lunch, Coppinger said. I'm very blessed and lucky, as for Felicia and Addie, to be in the situation that we are in. I love just seeing Fee every day I wake up. Gosh, how cool is this? My wife is going to be a world champion. Though Addie has been to a couple of Spencer's Invicta FC fights, she won't be in attendance at UFC 250. Instead, she will watch it from her aunt's couch. Coppinger will be in Spencer's corner. He's always in my corner ever since I've been in the UFC. It's nice to keep the same consistency, keeping things lighthearted, Spencer said. We all like to goof around and joke and stuff. It would be nice to keep some of that lightheartedness in the back room. Signing with the UFC, Spencer knew a fight with the best in the division was around the corner. It's a division that's still growing and developing, she added. I do feel like it's a huge opportunity for me to step in and become the face of the division. To take the belt from Amanda and start my legacy in the UFC, Spencer said. I don't think her GOAT status would transfer to me, but this would be a start to cement my legacy. And I agree with her in that. Even if Felicia Spencer were to defeat Amanda Nunes, who would be considered the best pound-for-pound women's fighter of all time? Easily, it's Amanda Nunes. I've always said this in the past, but I felt like I am not a fan of double belt champions. I really am not. And the reason why I'm not a fan of double belt champions, of dual champions, is the fact that most of these fighters, once you get to the highest level, compete only once a year. There's a reason why there's a reason why title challengers compete twice a year, because they got to go and fight their way up in the rankings. Because if they don't fight twice a year, then somebody might leapfrog over them and get a title fight. But once you're the champion, there really is no extra incentive, with the exception of money, of course, for you to continue on fighting twice a year. There really isn't. And here's the thing, if you are a former world champion, you end up, the money you make becomes significantly much less when you lose the belt. So you might as well keep the belt as long as you can, and you can pick and choose which fighter you want, so you can go maximize as much money as possible when you do become the champion. When you look at Tyron Woodley's last recent fight was $200K. He made $200,000 fighting against Gilbert Burns, but during his time as champion, fighting against Wonderboy Stephen Thompson, Darren Till, he was making $500,000. So about half of his fight purse is now gone ever since losing the belt, even though he's the number one ranked fighter in the welterweight division. And for Amanda Nunes, her being a double belt champion means that she'll only compete, because she's the top fighter, right? So she'll only compete in one division per year, once a year. There's no extra incentive for Amanda Nunes to compete in two divisions and fight 4 times a year. There really is not. There's no reason. I would like to live in a world where Amanda Nunes will defend both of her belts once a year. And even then, if the division's pace and accelerating in its development is very slow. The women's featherweight division has to be, without a doubt, the most weakest division in all of UFC's weight divisions, purely because Amanda Nunes has the belt and she's not even really active in that division, and because the champion isn't all that active in that division, there really is no extra incentive for any other fighters to go fight in that division. There are better UFC women's divisions out there. You have the women's strawweight division, which is the most deepest division of all the women's divisions. You have the women's flyweight division led by Valentina Shevchenko, Jessica Ai, Keegan, Jennifer Maia, Roxanne Modafferi, Yuan Calderwood, Lauren Murphy. And then we look at the women's bantamweight division, which is the division that Amanda Nunes originally came from. You got fighters like Amanda Nunes, Jermaine Durandame, Holly Holm, Juliana Pena, Aspen Ladd, Raquel Pennington, Armel Aldana, Kelly Vieira. You got Yana Kutskaya. You've got a lot of good fighters in the women's bantamweight division, and it's incredibly tough and competitive from 2 through 6. There's a lot of tough fighters. Raquel Pennington, Aspen Ladd, Juliana Pena, Holly Holm, Jermaine Durandame. Any of those fighters can beat one another. Now the question is, can any of those fighters beat Amanda Nunes? We're unsure, but it's not like Amanda Nunes has run out of title contenders here. She can fight Jermaine Durandame again. She really can. Holly Holm versus Amanda Nunes. Even though Amanda Nunes stomped Holly Holm still has some brand recognition as name value to her, considering the fact that she is one of the more popular fighters in all the women's divisions. And so when you look at the women's featherweight rankings, well, who's really active in that division? Amanda Nunes, she's not all that active in that division. She really isn't. She fought, her last 2 fights were against bantamweights, and those bantamweights were Jermaine Duranime and Holly Holm. And then she fought Christian Justino, Chris Cyborg, who was the only fighter that was of name value in the women's featherweight rankings at the time. So she's never really fought against any title competitor or anybody in the middle class or lower class within the women's featherweight rankings. She just blitzed her way up the rankings, and now she's a champion for the featherweight division. Problem, though, is that they put the jetpack on Chris Cyborg to be the face of the division. And now that Amanda Nunes is the face of two divisions, she can't prioritize herself towards any one division. She's more focused on the bantamweight division and the title contenders there and the challengers in that division than the featherweights. Because who's available in the featherweights? We got Megan Anderson and Felicia Spencer. That's about it. You got Zara Dos Santos, Norma Dumont, but really for the most part, it's only two people, Megan Anderson and Felicia Spencer. And so you hear interviews from Felicia Spencer talking about how she feels like that she can go cement her own legacy, and she could really help build the division as the face of that division if Amanda Nunes was no longer champion. Because if I could be blatantly honest with you, if Amanda Nunes were to defeat Felicia Spencer, I don't expect another women's featherweight title bout for another year to 2 years. I really don't. Because other than Megan Anderson, there's nobody else in the women's featherweight division that makes sense to be prioritized over any of the other fighters in the women's bantamweight division to go fight against Amanda Nunes in a major pay-per-view. I don't. And considering Amanda Nunes fights about only once a year, I really am unsure. I'm unsure what the future is for the women's featherweight division if Amanda Nunes were to win. Now, if Spencer were to win, I don't know, things get better and things could improve, and we could see a much more deeper division that is a lot more competitive. So you're listening to the GSMC Women's MMA Podcast, coming back right after the short break here. See you soon.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And welcome back to the podcast here. So this Saturday, I am excited because we get to see Felicia Spencer versus Amanda Nunes being the first headlining women's main event happening since the whole coronavirus pandemic. But we're going from that positive news there. I expect to see a lot of fun action here between those two fighters. And then we see two fighters here in Valerie Loredo and Macy Chiasson clashing on Twitter. Bellator flyweight Valerie Loredo and UFC bantamweight Macy Chiasson recently exchanged barbs on Twitter over the portrayal of women's mixed martial arts. And these two fighters proceed to name call each other, and I'm giving a fair warning in advance right now, in that these fighters are using some terminology that I don't really want to agree or say with, so whatever they say, it's their viewpoint. But the controversy here is that Valerie, she posted a video of herself dancing. She just posted a video of herself dancing in the gym. And then the response here is from UFC's Macy Chiasson, who replied shortly after saying, I'm not going to swear here, LOL, I can't anymore. Is this the message we want to continue to convey to not only our future leaders, but to the disgusting, already misogynistic dudes out there? Are we here to fight and be role models, or are we here for male followers and strip teases? Macy's talking about the dance that Valerie did. Personally, in my opinion, it's just someone dancing. Like, I don't really have a problem with that. I don't have anyone dancing at all. Like my sisters and my friends, like, they dance. So I don't see where the misogynistic aspect of that is here. But Valerie didn't really respond. Macy. So Macy says that she can't anymore. This is misogynistic. Like, you're appealing to the male demographic here. And Valerie responded here by saying, Girl, by putting other women down, you're contracting yourself. Who said I do anything for my male followers? I have been fighting since I was 2 years old, and I just like you, have other interests like tattoos. I like to dance. LMAO, simple. Macy responded with, I'm all for women being strong and sexy, but this really isn't it. So you're in your MMA gear at your gym gloves, mouthpiece, and shin guards on. You're portraying the wrong message to people who watch the sport. You're portraying that this is what women's MMA is about. Valerie responds with, nah, it shows you can be a strong feminine and sexy and still be a bad blank in a male-dominant industry. Macy Chesson responds with, but, are you though? Some of us actually care about the quality of women's MMA and women's sports in general. You're selling sex, not MMA. Valerie responds, I'll be doing a lot of Valerie and Macy. So Valerie responds with, I'm selling sex because I was born with a different body than you and I'm Hispanic. Lol, I fight in a cage just like you do. When I am not in a cage, I'm extremely feminine and I was born like that. Stop hating, lol. Macy responds, yes, you fight in a cage, but not like I do, and don't talk to me like I don't know what femininity means. It just goes on with them throwing out personal insults here. I'll just throw the last one out here. And it's Valerie saying, awesome, you showed in your way, I showed in mine. Good luck in your next bout. Macy responds with, awesome, you too. Maybe redirect some of this energy into training, and maybe we'll see you in the UFC soon. I'm just speaking for all the women who actually try to sell the sport. I am also speaking for women in general. So currently right now, as I am speaking, there's a lot of negativity going towards Macy, and my outlook on this, though, okay, so it's impossible to talk about this without mentioning two fighters. Paige Van Zandt and Tony Ferguson. And also you say also Michelle Watterson to an extent. So, there's nothing wrong being an attractive looking fighter and also being able to dance. That's how I see it. Because how I perceive it though, I just perceive it as Valerie being a person who likes fighting and likes dancing. So, she's dressed as a mixed martial arts fighter, and during her time in the gym, she decides like, hey, I feel like dancing right now. That's how I see it. Because Tony Ferguson, he dances all the time. And I don't see anything wrong with him dancing, or I don't see any, like, him, like, selling sex to a fight. I really don't. I just see Tony Ferguson as a person who likes to dance. He danced his way out of the hospital after his war he had against Justin Gaethje. That's all I see it. And then, for Paige, a lot of people pick specifically on Paige Van Zandt a lot because of the fact that she looks like, because she is a model. A lot of people look at Paige Van Zandt mostly as a model than she is a fighter. And here's the thing, Paige Van Zandt can fight. Paige Van Zandt is legit. She's a real tough fighter. One of the more tougher fighters. I wouldn't call her one of the best fighters, but she's definitely a true fighter, a warrior, a killer in the cage. And there's nothing wrong for the fact, because I've said it before in the past actually. I always support fighters who have side gigs, who do other stuff in order to go make money, because in the world of mixed martial arts, you don't really make that much money. And so for Paige Van Zandt, and she's talked about it on her Instagram, where she says she's made a lot more money being more of an Instagram model than she does make money in her fight-per-fight basis with her contract, because she's openly said that she doesn't like her contract right now for the UFC, as she's not making that much money in a per-fight basis during her time for the UFC. And so, I support Paige Van Zandt having an alternate way to go make money, considering the fact that you don't make that much money already in the world of mixed martial arts. And now, for Valerie and Macy here, I think Macy just sees this as like, oh, Valerie, you're not allowed to, show some femininity at all because you're a mixed martial artist and you're a female mixed martial artist and you're supposed to act in a certain way. I don't agree with Macy here. I don't think you have to act in a certain way. The same way I don't think every mixed martial artist should act like Ben Askren, Chael Sonnen, Tito Ortiz, or Colby Covington. You don't have to act that certain way. Just go be yourself. And if Valerie says, I am being myself because I enjoy dancing, and I'm a mixed martial artist, and I know I'm attractive looking, then that's me being me. There shouldn't be no person, especially no fighter should act a certain way because they have to. I enjoy diversity in my mixed martial arts fighters. We can have the larger-than-life superstar in Hollywood, Ronda Rousey. We can have the no-nonsense, very straightforward fighter in Amanda Nunes. We can have a very simple family person like Felicia Spencer. We can have the model fighter like a Paige Van Zandt. That's what I like about mixed martial arts. It's full of characters, full of varying different characters and personalities. We can have... That's the reason why people like Chael Sonnen a lot. Even though it bothers me that Chael Sonnen is always in character for the most part, and it's hard to tell when he's in character and when he's on character. But one reason why people like Chael Sonnen is the character he created, and that he thinks he's an amazing, great fighter. He kind of is, but he thinks he's higher in the totem pole than he actually is. He's never won the UFC belt, but yet he says he thinks he won the UFC belt. He calls himself the greatest of all time, comparing himself to Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson, even though the truth is he's actually just a proper journeyman fighter in the world of mixed martial arts. He thinks he's a knockout artist, even though he really isn't. He's a great wrestler, but he's not the greatest wrestler, but he tells himself that he is the greatest wrestler. That's the appeal of Chael Sonnen. And so, you can have different types of fighters out there portraying different aspects of themselves, because I don't like it if every women's fighter was the exact same as Ronda Rousey, or the exact same as Amanda Nunes, or the exact same as Felicia Spencer. Then I don't think women's mixed martial arts would be, as popular, as enjoyable as I see today. Like, one of the more popular fighters right now in the UFC, even though she hasn't competed in the past couple of years, is Rose Namajunas. Rose Namajunas is simultaneously one of the best fighters in the women's strawweight division, and also to a lot of guys and girls, she's also very attractive looking because of her tomboy persona and attitude. So really, I don't mind, I don't mind somebody dancing and doing a TikTok video. I don't mind them putting that side of themselves out there. I really don't. A lot of fighters are weirdos. Let's just be honest with you. Have you seen Team Alpha Male? They are one of the most cringiest camps out there in the world of mixed martial arts. They say the most weirdest, cringiest, and the way they present themselves is kind of quirky and strange. But that's who they are. There should be no problem for someone who's attractive looking, who just so happens to be a fighter, and they have to act a certain way because they are a fighter. Same way, if you are a fighter, you have to act a certain way outside of the ring or outside the octagon. No, that's not how things work. No matter who you are, no matter what you do, you should always just go and be yourself. That's what I always say. I personally think Macy is just blowing this out of proportion, and what I see is Valerie posting a video about herself, showing her goofy side and showing her interest in dancing. And she also happens to be a mixed martial arts fighter who could probably beat me up in a fight. Now I understand Macy's perspective the same way I understand Brendan Schaub's issue with a fighter like Sage Northcutt, and that, look at him, or look at her, you're selling them on their looks. Both Paige Van Zandt and Sage Northcutt are aware of this. They are aware that a lot of people make fun of them for their looks. And to me, I see that as bullying. That's what I see. Making fun of somebody because of how they look or how they present themselves, to me, that's bullying, and I don't think that's alright or should be seen as acceptable. I believe Macy's heart is in the right place, but I don't think she should have snapped as she did. So you're listening to the GSMC Women's MMA Podcast, coming back right after the short break here.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
And welcome back. So, I've been talking about how mixed martial artists present a certain image about themselves, and one fighter here with a certain image is the evil princess, Janessa Morandin. Janessa, the evil princess Morandin, didn't train for a few months after her last fight versus Emily Ducote in August. The bout headlined as the co-main event at Invicta FC 36. Under the bright lights, though, thoughts consumed Morandin far more than any physical pain. Something inside bothered the Invicta FC strawweight, and yet nobody in her corner knew. I fell into a depression. I fell really deep after losing the fight for the belt. Even before the last fight, I was already depressed, Morandin said in Portuguese. My depression wasn't because of defeats, but because I felt I had nothing to fight for. I hid it from everyone because I was afraid that they wouldn't let me fight. When it wasn't enough to win the title, she needed to reframe her life and her reason for fighting. Miranda took time off to assess her whole situation and found her safe haven in Louisiana. Her new vision while training at Elite Combat Academy, she met a good friend, Brent Mason, Dr. Kurt Priggen, and his wife, Bobby Jo Dean Priggen. They attended one of her Muay Thai classes and noticed her impaired vision. After we met, we noticed that she's basically blind. My mother and aunt work for an eye surgeon, Mrs. Priggen said. We talked to Dr. Shelby about helping her out. I don't know if it was the mother's intuition, but we just hit it off. Fate brought her to be part of our family. They did everything they could to get her back into fight mode, she added. I said, baby girl, you aren't going to be able to fight if you can't see. So my mother and aunt talked to their surgeon, and they offered to do a small incision lenticle extraction. Eye correction for her just because she's family. An eye operation was just a surface level of what she needed en route of a strawweight title. Thoughts consumed her mind, and that the outer world couldn't grip what transpired within. Beneath the surface, we hide it. Our mental health, I was one of them that would hide from everyone. We are seen as athletes, superheroes, champions, fighters, and only lastly as human beings, Miranda said. It seemed that we are no longer human beings. We are subject to failure. Every time I said I needed some time, it was still because I still don't know if I was going to make it back. When Miranda walked through the President's door, Mrs. President immediately saw something was on her mind. She asked her, as she does with her own children, Janessa, what's on your mind? Talk to me. She would say, I couldn't do this punch combo. I worked and worked. I just kept doing the wrong footwork with the combo punch. I was like, that's alright. Sometimes doing it too much can just affect you because you're focusing on everything that you're doing wrong. Just let it go. And go back to the gym tomorrow. The first time Miranda came to the President's home, she looked around and saw how everything was very open, how there weren't things on the windows. There weren't tall brick walls, nothing that blocked off anyone. I don't understand why she was kind of tearing up a bit, Mrs. President said. Mrs. President says, Janessa, what's wrong? Miranda responds with, I've never seen homes like this. Mrs. President responds, what do you mean? That's when she was telling me about her neighborhood, how she grew up. You can't walk with a purse, Mrs. President said. It just broke my heart. I could have not imagined growing up that way. And that was the first impression immediately after she walked out of my car. As a mother, it took her back envisioning how Miranda grew up in Brazil. I wanted to sweep her up and cuddle and tell her that's going to be okay. That was the very first insight into her life and how she actually grew up. Subtitle here, Growing Up. Miranda lived in the small city of Urichem, Rio Grande do Sul, living in a toxic home environment of domestic violence. She moved on her own at the age of 16 in Florianopolis. That's when she began competing in Muay Thai. Moving around became the usual for Miranda, while her mother, Sola Santos, continued to live in Urichem. Eventually, Miranda came back and helped her mother for 2 years. At age 18, she made her MMA debut, living in Balneario Camboriú. The Evil Princess went 9-0 in her MMA pro career. Then she moved again. This time, she relocated to Curitiba, Paraná. Evil Princess trained under Killer Bee's Rodrigo Vidal, which she said it was the best Muay Thai training she's had in Brazil. At 23, she moved to Florida and continued her training with Killer Bees at their Melbourne gym. American Killer Bees. She went to American Top Team just for a fight camp and decided to stay. Living in a foreign country away from her mother made it difficult in finding a support system that she needed. I was afraid that I would never be able to enter the cage again. Going back and forth from training, crying every day, Miranda said, I had anxiety attacks, panic attacks alone in another country, another language, afraid of everything and everyone. I reached a level where I had nothing but the fight itself. A reflection, the Prejons aren't just a family that provided eye surgery, but a family that brought Miranda in as their own daughter. She received the support that she longed for. They changed my life. They are my second family who brought me back with love. Before meeting them, I didn't believe in people anymore, Miranda said. They brought me back when they showed up and gave me love and believed in my dream. Because they made me feel special again, they saw something in me that I couldn't see at that stage of my life. I felt defeated. I let the feeling of defeat take over my family because I couldn't talk to anybody. I didn't feel good enough to do what I love the most, which is fighting. And they loved the person Janessa, not Evil Princess. They made me see that I was much more than what was happening. They made me feel like a human being again. When Mrs. President first met Miranda, she saw brokenness, no self-confidence. The root of it all was mental. Physically, she was fight ready. In her mind, she wasn't ready. It was beating her up. We took a lot of time sitting down and breaking that wall and figuring out what was blocking her. Mrs. President said, it was self-confidence. We did everything that we could do to build the confidence back up. Miranda used to be very shy, and President thought that she needed to break that with her talkative personality. She would start talking to people eventually when normally she wouldn't. Janessa needed someone to be there to listen and not to fix. Mrs. President said she was able to speak freely to express how she's feeling instead of someone trying to fix her. Subtitle here, Extended Family. Mrs. President's 3 sons now have a sister in Miranda. The MMA fighter of the family spent a lot of time with the middle child, Keegan, the wrestler. His coaches would open their mats up for her as she practiced with the team. The Invicta FC strawweight became not only a mentor to Keegan, but also became one of his biggest supporters. I was never able to cheer for someone or accompany someone to play, because when I decided to fight, I abandoned everything, Miranda said. It was the fight and me, training and me. I was able to breathe a little in that time with them without worrying about myself. Watching his performance was a light on my path, and also made me want to do it all over again. He's a very talented wrestler. I love wrestling before, but after spending that time with him and the boys at school, my love for wrestling increased and the desire to learn more also. Getting to know wrestling up close was a dream for Miranda. Road trips to Atlanta for Keegan's wrestling championships was quality time with family. It's something that Miranda didn't have as a kid. The trips to wrestling championship in Atlanta, Georgia felt very nostalgic for me. I remember when I traveled to amateur Muay Thai championships in Brazil and did it all for the love of it, she said. I remembered when I fought for love, I would drive for hours to the championship, do several fights during the day, and come back home at night with a medal and joy. Those memories are intact vividly, as if for today, and it was the only good thing she had growing up. Travels with friends, karaoke, and playing games during the trips. The people I met, also the opponents I faced, made me a better athlete. To be able to see another world outside my home, she said, and to see that there was life outside of domestic violence. Practice was escape every day. Championships were the only thing that made me believe in the future. Family relationships. Santos didn't agree with her daughter competing in Muay Thai at first. With domestic violence at home, she thought it would only promote more violence. I thought it would be more violence. We went through difficult times of violence already, Santos said. On the contrary, it was a sport and a discipline. She played with her older brother and liked it. I became her #1 fan with pride. A decade ago, Santos and her 15-year-old daughter, Janessa, ran away from home just the way they were dressed, slippers and some clothes. Sitting on a park bench at dawn, they hugged each other while the other ones looking at the stars, wondering when they were going to be able to make it back home. I told her that soon we would laugh at this moment, and she'll be rejoicing in Las Vegas. We dreamed of coming to the U.S., Santos said. It was an example of overcoming what we went through. And so before I finish the story, I'm going to continue the story after the short break, but 3 people's names came to mind as I was reading this. I was thinking about Amanda Nunes, Tyron Woodley, and Darren Till. What does those 3 fighters have? Similar to Miranda. I feel like those 3 fighters, psychologically, mentally, physically, they're there. Psychologically, I think they were really damaged upon losing their belt or losing their last major big fight. I really felt like Darren Till was a completely different person after he lost to Tyron Woodley. Tyron Woodley, after he lost the belt, completely different person. And same goes for Amanda Nunes. And I think it's really healthy for these fighters to take, a year or 2-year breaks. Mixed martial arts is a very tiring sport for you mentally and physically. And so if a fighter decides to take a break for a year or 2, kind of like Kevin Lee's doing, then I can respect it. I really do.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
And welcome back. So I'm continuing the story here of Janessa Miranda. And it continues with Santos. Her mom was a teacher during the day and a production supervisor for a clothing company at night. For 6 months, she worked overnight until Santos managed to open her own clothing store. Many times they found their stuff broken and thrown on the floor when they would return home. Miranda was looking for more support and intensifying her training before her parents separated. Santos bought a 125cc motorcycle that gave them freedom to move around. They walked around the avenue at dawn until they were sure they would return home safely. On the weekend, Santos stayed at her father's house. Miranda's father stopped drinking and has another beautiful family. It's in quotes. But she doesn't neglect what she and her mother have suffered. It was me and her against the world. My mother was amazing. Even in the worst moments, we defended each other, she said. We never stopped believing that one day we'd be able to change that. She and I together made the change with our own strength. Santos suffered a lot with the distance away from Miranda. She cried a lot without any direction, yet she encouraged her daughter to pursue her career and stay in the U.S. Mrs. President communicated with Miranda's mother through WhatsApp. Even though there's a language barrier, she saw that a daughter needed that loving family atmosphere that her mother provided back in Brazil. I am very grateful to have found true friend in Bobby. Janessa always tells me everything, and the support, friendship, and help from her family and her second mother, Santos said. She's growing more as a fighter and as a person. Miranda got acquainted with each family member. At first, she would sit down and barely interact. A family of chitter-chatters didn't allow her to give her one or two answers. She started to notice the family was interested in her. New experiences. There's only one proper way for a Louisiana family to usher in their new daughter, attend a football game. She never saw a football game until seeing the youngest son, Carson, play at Evangel Christian Academy. She thought Carson made a big play because the referee was calling him out for face mask. Our fans were wondering what she was cheering for, Mrs. President said. She also opened her eyes to her culture, cooking pão de queijo cheese bread, and opened her culture for the boys. Miranda would wake up early and grab her coffee and have a conversation with Mr. President, who is a heart surgeon. She would cook breakfast each morning, but at first she wouldn't even pull out a pot nor a container. The comfort of home grew on her as she lived with the Presidents, and the family found a daughter and a sister that they never had. She fits in this family so perfectly. I cried when I had to send her back to Florida. She broke me in how it would feel like to send my boys to college. Mrs. President said it was only 2 weeks until I had to go and visit her in Florida, which was my first time going to Florida. Miranda stayed with the Presidents from mid-August until November. When she moved back to Florida, the family didn't want her to leave. That's how quickly she became part of the family. Last Thanksgiving and Christmas, the Presidents had a visiting family guest for the holidays. When she came back home, she beats up the boys, which is hilarious because she's 5'0" and my oldest son is 6'3". She can take him down, Mr. President said. When we do family activities, she's able to take a step back and doesn't feel like fighting is year-round. That's what she really needs. The final subheading here is Why I Fight. The Invicta FC strawweight gave up trusting people until she found her family in Louisiana. They gave her a new sense to fight again as she returned to American Top Team. Today, I don't fight for a title, but to show women that they can do anything because one day my mother needed hope, she said. And it was because of the struggle that I managed to give it to her. Through her own story and her clothing brand, Miranda's main objective is to inspire and donate to women's victims of domestic violence. I want to show people in my small town in the inland southern Brazil who knows my story, she said, that if I got out of those abusive conditions and got where I am today, then anyone can do it. We have the power to create our own history, and mine is starting all over. So that's a very heartwarming story in my personal opinion here. I really do believe, good for her really, good for her. There is a lot to be cynical about as it pertains to the fight game. Consider the fact that the world of mixed martial arts and combat sports is an individual sport. It's not a team-oriented sport. It's an individual sport where upselling and promoting yourself and being kind of selfish gets you ahead. That's the weird sad truth and the weird strange reality of how mixed martial arts work. That if you're the number one fighter, you're looking out for yourself. You hear it all the time and you see it all the time from fight analysts, fight experts, the fighters themselves. At UFC Countdowns, you always hear the fighter goes on to say, I'm doing what's best for me, I'm doing what's best for my family, or I'm doing what's best for my career. For the most part, your inner circle is very tight and very small. It's a recurring trend that's happening with a lot of mixed martial arts fighters, especially back in the 90s. Especially back in the 90s when you had guys like Frank Shamrock and Ken Shamrock. Their entire life was that Lion's Den and nothing else, really. And once you lose trust and respect within that small community, then you don't really mean anything at all, because that's your heart and soul, and everything that you care about should be within the lines then. That kind of mentality also applied towards Team Alpha Male, in that team is based around like a bunch of dudes who have this, it's all about the club, it's all about the team kind of aspect, but their inner circle is very small, and they never try to expand upon that, because in my personal opinion, the issue that TJ Dillashaw had with Cody Garbrandt, with Uriah Faber, the conflicts within Team Alpha Male are unnecessarily complicated, and really, I'd like a lot more if a lot more fighters were a lot more honest with themselves and with other fighters, and can stop playing a character at times. Because you really don't have to, like, the Evil Princess character, that's just a character. The Notorious Conor McGregor, the Notorious aspect, that's a character. Ben Askren, Chael Sonnen, and Colby Covington, they're always playing a character. And so, stories like these really make me appreciate the fighter a lot more, and makes me see the human side of the character. One of the more redeeming aspects to Colby Covington was when he did an interview one time where his voice is always like this. He's always like, yeah, I'm the best. I'm the greatest ever, man. Everyone's afraid of me. Yeah. And then I saw him in one interview where he was very soft-spoken. He was very quiet. He was very, very humble. There's nothing wrong for a fighter to show the human side of themselves. This is why I was very on the fence as it pertains to Macy's opinion towards a TikTok video in the last talk I had, where she was really upset over one fighter, like, just putting up a dancing TikTok video, because I don't really mind that. I don't mind fighters showing the other aspects and stuff. They're not just fighters. All because you're a mixed martial arts fighter doesn't mean you always have to be this rough and tough person. You don't have to be that. When you look at fighters like Forrest Griffin, Stephan Bonner, Tyron Woodley, like, all these fighters have different aspects to themselves and different parts of their lives. Tyron Woodley has extensively talked about how he doesn't have the passion for mixed martial arts anymore, and that he definitely needed some time off. Kevin Lee is the most recent example of this. Kevin Lee, after his fight with Charles Oliveira, he walked away, because a couple of years ago, Kevin Lee was this new hot commodity. He's always talking trash. People try to call him the next Conor McGregor wannabe, and to be honest with you, he really was a Conor McGregor wannabe. He was trying way too hard. You got fighters like Alexander Hernandez who talk all this big game, but then after the fight is over, they then bring themselves down, and they're super unconfident about themselves, and they bring themselves over to a dark place because they lost all that confidence. And when I look at fighters like Kevin Lee, Hernandez, Tyron Woodley, you know what? Like, retiring, if you don't think mixed martial arts is your true passion, then you can leave anytime you want. If you do believe it is your passion, then take some time away. Go do something brand new. That's why I like Cody Garbrandt in his countdown lead-up when he's going to fight against Rafael Assunção. It's because Cody Garbrandt, I always feel like Cody Garbrandt, when he goes to his fight, he listens too much to his Team Alpha Male squad. He's surrounded himself with Team Alpha Male so much that, and here's the thing, Uriah Faber ain't the best of coaches out there. Team Alpha Male, they're kind of questionable in terms of their coaching at times. And so Cody Garbrandt, he kind of left Team Alpha Male and he's training with another squad in New Jersey. Yeah, he's training with Ricardo Almeida. And so I'm happy for Cody Garbrandt putting himself in a new position so he can give himself a new outlook in fighting and a new outlook in mixed martial arts. And I think that's healthy. That's healthy. Every fighter should go through that one period in time where they have to, like, okay, take a step back. Do I really want to do this? And if I want to do this, what can I do? Like, because doing the same thing over and over again isn't going to help me become a better fighter or a better person. I got to keep evolving. I got to keep changing. And Janessa Morandin, I'm happy for her to be able to find that one thing that can go give her the passion, and that thing that will go give her that extra push in order for her to become, because she was a former title contender, and now after this, for all we know, she'd be pushing herself again, or she's as motivated again to become a champion. And so I'm happy for her, I'm happy for her family, and I wish more fighters were just like her and were more honest with themselves. There's nothing wrong putting that wall down and showing that very sensitive side of yourself. Because the truth is, everyone is sensitive, and upon being humble and accepting that, you can grow and become a better person. And so that does it for today's podcast. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Women's MMA Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask you, please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps up. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Women's Mixed Martial Arts Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.